I much prefer to do the learning in person. Much prefer to be with you all, but clearly this was meant to be. And I'll tell you why. Yesterday I was like, should I cancel? Should I do it in person? I'm feeling so much better. I can really do it. I have a negative COVID test, all that stuff. But my mother said, cancel the class. She was like, do not do it. So talking about the conversation, we're in the middle of learning about honoring our parents. So my mom said to cancel the class, and I was like, aye, okay, I will do that. I will do whatever you tell me to do. So we're going to get back to the topic of honoring our parents. Second part of this class, I want to close that conversation, and there is actually no one better to teach with me than my mom, who I've learned everything about this topic from. So we're going to get to that part too, but I want to close Hanukkah by bringing the light, the sparks, the holiness, bringing all of that and really like honing it in, really bringing it into our bodies, our souls, like whatever sparks we could kind of hold on to, because we really need it. Okay, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to use this book, the Book of Our Heritage, as the source for what I'm about to teach you. And this is actually one of my favorite books. This one is a very old edition. Not sure when this was printed, but there's new editions that have come out. It's a little bit easier to read, but the Book of Our Heritage is just a gem. It's actually anonymous. No author is on this, but it's written by Eliyahu Kitov, who was a giant of a man who passed away at a very young age, and he wrote some phenomenal works. So what I'm about to share with you might be a little hard to swallow, okay? Because we just finished Hanukkah, and Hanukkah starts in the month of Cheshvan, okay? And we spoke about Cheshvan last Rosh Chodesh. We had a gathering where we spoke about how it is the darkest month, but at the end, okay, we have Cheshvan last month. Then we have Kislev, which is also, we wait till the end of Kislev, the 25th of Kislev, to finally have Hanukkah, right? 25 days, that's a whole month of Cheshvan, of darkness, of bitterness, 25 days of waiting for some light. And then we have Hanukkah, which is such a relief and so much joy, so much happiness. And then in the middle of Hanukkah, this is the only holiday in the entire Jewish yearly cycle that kind of straddles. It is like, it straddles between 2 months. So Hanukkah starts in Kislev and ends in Tevet, which started 4 days ago. Today's the 3rd day of Tevet. And Tevet, I'm going to read this. This is not my words, but Tevet is a month of anguish. I know. It's like, really? Again? Another hard month? So there are some pretty significant things that happen in this month. There are a few atrocities that befall the Jewish people on the 8th day, the 9th day, and the 10th day of the month. And the 10th day is commemorated by a fast day. So that's coming up, I think it's Sunday night, Monday. I'll have to check the calendar when the 10th of Tevet lands. And I'll share more on our chat about the fast. And it's a minor fast. So if fasting is hard for you, this is not the fast for you. It's not on the same scale as Yom Kippur, which is probably the most severe fast, or Tisha B'Av, which is probably the next most severe fast that people usually try to do. This is a more minor fast. We have about 5 fast days in a year, in the Jewish year. So these 3 days, and we don't fast for 3 days, right? But we the 8th, 9th, and 10th culminates with a public fast day. And so what happened on this day? Okay, and there's quite a lot of things that actually happened, but things were put into place on the 10th day. The evil Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, he laid siege. This bug is driving me crazy. Sorry, it's like a fruit fly. He laid siege on Jerusalem. And that was the beginning of the downfall that led to the destruction of the temple. So something was implanted into this day that was just the beginning of the end. Okay, and something else very, very, this is a little bit hard to understand, but hopefully by the end of this class, you'll have a little bit more insight into this. Another terrible thing that happened on these 3 days, by the way, it was called, there were 3 days of darkness. The 8th, 9th, and 10th of this month were like, we went into a dark period, like physical darkness and spiritual darkness. So something else that happened was the Torah was translated into Greek, okay? And this was the decree of the king. How do you spell that? How do you say this? Ptolemy? Ptolemy, okay? He gathered 70. He gathered 70 wise scholars, and he forced them to translate the Torah. Now, I don't know about you, but thank God for Art Scroll, right? Like for those English, the stone chumashim that we use, right? That we use every week. I would be lost. I'm not fluent in Hebrew, right? Mom, you're not fluent in Hebrew. If we didn't have translation, we would be so disconnected from the Torah. So why was it such a calamity that the Torah was translated into another language? Does anyone want to unmute themselves and give an idea? What was the devastation that was going on? Why was this so tragic? And by the way, it was miraculous. This king, he put 70 wise scholars into 70 different rooms, and he forced them to translate the Torah without having anything, right? Just write the Torah. And they all did it exactly the same. Like there was no discrepancies. Like they all did it, and that was a miracle, because there's so, as we've learned, shivim panim la Torah. There are 70 facets to the Torah, right? We don't all think the same out of every, you read a pasuk in the Torah, and we have 10 commentaries on it. Rashi says this, and Ramban says this, and the Ibn Ezra says, there's so many commentaries, there's so many different, we say 2 Jews, 3 opinions. That's how we are. We were very opinionated. So how would 70 people all agree on the same thing? That was a miracle. Okay, but they had to all agree, because otherwise it would have been even more devastating. So would anyone like to unmute themselves and give a suggestion, an idea why it was so devastating for the Torah to be forced to be translated to Greek? I want to hear. If anyone, unmute yourselves. Let's see who else is on here. There's 27 people on here. I'm sure someone has an idea. Oh, Chana, I see Chana talking, but she's muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so it would be comparing it to today, that the Torah is translated so the Americans can read it. Even for myself, that I'm fluent in Hebrew, I still like to read the English translation.
So, but it's not why it's so good that we have the Torah translated, so that you and I could understand in our own language. So why would it be a terrible thing? That's my question.
Well, the Greeks didn't want the Jews to do anything religious.
Okay, so what did they want? What were they forcing? What did they want to get? Why were they asking for this translation?
Maybe for information, to, if they saw them doing something that was unusual and they didn't understand it, they could say, oh, this is a mitzvah, and we're going to punish them for that.
Okay. Maybe they wanted to take things at literal, at face value, and not, and maybe call us out. Well, it says that you have to do this, or who knows what they wanted to do. But what we do know about the Greeks is that they didn't want to necessarily destroy us physically. They wanted to suck the spirituality out of us. They wanted to leave us as an empty shell. Like whatever we had inside, the godliness, the fear of heaven, they couldn't relate to that. They were all about the external. They were about the vessel, but not what was in the vessel. Okay, so I'm going to read you just a quote from this book. Okay, this is what he says over here. If one translates the Torah into another language, he is therefore like one who makes of the Torah an empty vessel, empty of its entire wealth of meaning, which is the essence of Torah. He is left with literal meaning alone. How impossible is such an effort, therefore, for those who love the Torah and know its greatness? This is the difference between all, we have lots of stripes of Jews, right? And we have one Torah, but there's a very big difference in people that, there's the Bible, right? We have lots of Christian friends. My husband has many, many non-Jewish friends. Some of them are very learned in the Torah. Some of them even follow the Torah. He has Noahide friends and people that keep the Sabbath, even though they're not Jewish, but they are missing something very important, the oral Torah. There has to be the written and the oral together. We have to understand it in its width, depth, breadth. I don't even know the words. Like, it's not a small thing. It's a very large thing. We have to hold both together. So you could write the words, but it was missing the deeper meaning. And
doesn't this go to, I mean, it's what we do all the time. I mean, people spend their whole lives interpreting and discussing, and you're always saying every word has meaning. Why is the word the here? Why is it a? I mean, that's the whole point, right? So if people spend their whole lives, year after year, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of interpreting and dissecting, and isn't that the whole point? So if you're just looking at it as black and white,
to do it again and again and again, right? And it's
Right.
like deeper and more layers, because that's the pursuit of our lives, to toil in it and to study it. It's not like you read it and you get it. That's not Torah. That's not Judaism. Our whole entire lives. I mean, that's why the whole calendar, it's like, here we are again, we're starting at Bereshit. Like, oh, we've done this 47 times. Like, no, now do it for your 47th time. You will see a whole other dimension to it, right?
and we've also talked about the thing, like how each year it also depends where you are in your life as to how you're interpreting it or how it affects you, right?
Totally. I love it. Yes, you get it. You totally get it. And this is coming from a woman who's been studying Torah for, I don't know, 2 decades plus, right, Deborah? So it's right. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything, right? That's kind of how we feel. We've been on this journey for decades, and it's endless. I mean, my mom, who's such a role model to me, the best thing that happened through Corona is that my mom started studying Torah every single morning. Every single morning, she has an hour of Torah study. And that's never happened before, right? I mean, my mom was working for, I don't know, 40 something years in a career, and she never took time to really, but it's as long, and I've said this before, as long as the candle is lit, as long as you're alive, as long as your soul is within you, Efshar l'takein, you could fix, you could grow, you could change. So you're never too old. You could be 100 years old and you could be learning, right? And here's the great quote that I've probably shared, and this is from my friend Pamela Klayman in Israel. She says, "You're either green and growing or brown and dying." That's it. There's nothing in between. So where do you want to be? You could, right? And even Babi Gutsa, my grandmother, who passed away at close to 99 years old, till the last day of her life, she was green and growing. I had the thank God, the merit, the gift. Okay, you know that it's my birthday tomorrow, right? But 2 years ago, on my 39th birthday, it was such a, talk about hashgacha pratit, which is divine intervention, such a gift. Can I just share a quick story, okay? HP story. Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So Liz, right? I see Liz is on here, and there's a few people that were on the trip. I was the trip leader for Momentum in November 2019. I came home and so jet lagged, so exhausted that all I wanted to do was like find my feet and get back to a routine. And I get this call from an organization in Montreal that said, "Would you come be a guest speaker at our Shabbaton for NCSY teenagers?" And I thought to myself, I'm so exhausted. It's the last thing I should do. And they couldn't even afford to pay me. Like they were like barely paying for my flight. And I called my dad, and my father said, no, Eve, be with your family, stay home. And I said, but Dad, maybe I could come see Bubby. Like Montreal is a 5-hour drive or a 1-hour flight from Toronto, where my Bubby was. And I just felt like I should go. So I said, okay, I'm coming. And I spent the weekend in Montreal. By Saturday night, my grandmother wasn't feeling well. By Sunday morning, when I flew to Toronto, my father picked me up and he took me straight to the hospital. And it was like, we had a plan, like, Bubby, I'm going to spend my birthday with you. We're going to go out to eat. We're going to get our nails done. Like, that's all we were going to do, just spend the day together. And we ended up spending the day together in a very different way. I spent the day and the next day with my grandmother at her bedside. And it was the day before she passed away. What a gift that was, just to hold her hand. And she said to me, there was a moment when my mom and my dad I'm getting so choked up. It's 2 years ago, right? There was my mom and dad went out to speak to the doctor, and my grandmother was holding my hand. And she said to me, she looked me in the eyes and she said, Evela, that's what she called me. She said, is this it? Is this the end? And she was green and growing. She was stepping into it. She was full of life until Hashem took her soul from her. She was fighting. She was embracing. She was stepping into it. Like she just wanted to know, like, is this it? Am I going to go? Am I going to meet my creator? Am I going to meet my ancestors? Her first husband from before the Holocaust, her second husband, my Zaidi, her parents, her siblings, her aunts, her uncles. I mean, she was a soul survivor. Like it was like this fight, this like letting go to go on to the next stage. It was so beautiful to watch it. It was a beautiful letting go in a growthful way that we all want to have at the end of our lives. Ready. That's the green and growing. How did I get on this topic? Okay, I'm sorry. It's because my mom is next to me. I'm very, I'm famished. It's a Yiddish word. I'm all overwhelmed. Okay, so let's get back to our topic. Okay, so I was trying to explain where we are in the Jewish calendar. Okay, so we just came from this bitter month of Cheshvan, through the darkness of Kislev, just with the brightness of Hanukkah. And now again, we're in this month of anguish. That's what our sages tell us, right? The month of Tevet is a month of anguish. And it's almost like Hanukkah is this bridge, this umbrella. And this is what our sages say. If we didn't have Hanukkah, the Jew would not survive the darkness. We need that light to bridge us, to get us through, okay? So now that so that's why, ladies, and we're still holding on to the little ends of Hanukkah. It was over yesterday. It was over last night, but we're still, raise your hand if you put away your menorah. You did? Wow. Okay. Usually mine would be out for about.
Mine are always showing.
Yours are always showing? That's so
Right.
nice.
Well, yeah, because I have a whole collection. So where am I gonna
nice,
put 'em?
nice.
Oh, mine is also showing when you said, yeah, it's right here.
But Sue, when I say yours is always showing, that means you like scrape the wax off them already. Yeah, I'm impressed.
And
Actually, Bob did it. Bob did it. We had some people over and we had a whole bunch of them lit, and Bob did all the scraping of the wax.
Okay, nice. It's like the
This
ceremony.
this was my mother's Hanukkah.
Beautiful. That is
I
so
never-
beautiful.
Silver, and I never put it away, and it's right here in my living room.
That is so beautiful. And please, God, you should pass that on to your son, Hannah. And
Amen. From your
Please,
mouth
God.
to God's ears.
yeah, it should go from generation to generation. So, okay. So did anyone read the note that I sent on our chat yesterday? Okay. Did anyone I also posted it on my Facebook page. I got a lot of people writing to me about it. Tell me more. Where did you hear about that from? And I actually received this the first year that I heard about this, but it's so weird how things come to you at different times. Like I'm always studying. I mean, I have, if you would see what's behind this green screen, I mean, books and books and books, like shelves and shelves of books. Like we're people of the book. We're always studying, but for some reason, I never saw this idea until this year, and I saw it in 3 different places. So what, if you missed it, I'll just share that when you're packing your menorah away for the year, take out a piece of paper and pour your heart onto that paper. Write down every prayer that you hold in your heart, every deep, strong feeling, emotion that you want to put out there to God, into the world, and write it and tie it onto your menorah and put it away for the year. That menorah, it's a very powerful symbol. It's the symbol of our Judaism. It's such an important part. We don't even understand like the depth, the symbolism of the menorah, but it's everything, right? And put it away. And next year, when you take out your menorah, I want you to read it. And I want you to see how many of your deepest prayers have come to fruition, okay? Now, a friend of mine, the first person that told me about this, because 3 people told me about it this year. So the first person is a friend of mine who goes to my Zumba class. And she told me that last year, someone told her about it. She had COVID over Hanukkah. She couldn't be with any of her community, any of her family, any of her people. She was isolated and quarantined for the whole Hanukkah. And someone told her she should do this. And she was like, you know, when we're at that pit, when we're at the bottom and there's only one way to go, we've all been there before, right? There's like, everything seems so bleak. So she was there and she poured out her heart about the kid that needs help and the financial situation. And she has a grandchild that was undergoing chemotherapy. She had so much on her plate and she put everything down on that paper. And this year, when she opened up her menorah, she saw that so many of her deepest prayers, they came to fruition. It was unbelievable. She said it was such a miracle. She had never done this before, and it seemed to work so beautifully. So I tried it. I'm really, really hoping, and I'm really encouraging you. And someone wrote to me last night, they said, I just read your post and I want to do it, but it's already, I live in Australia, she said, and it's 2 days after Hanukkah. Do you think it's still good? I said, yeah, like God is always wanting our prayers. Like, even if you do it in 3 weeks from now, it's all good, right? It's only good. So just do it. So I'm encouraging you guys to do it. Okay, so here we are. We just, as we came out of Hanukkah and how, you know, obviously 2 opinions and how we light the menorah. The one that we go with is that every single day we add a light, right? In an ascending way. Every day we add another light. We light that first light first, right? And by the time we come out of Hanukkah, we're at the you know, when all the lights are lit and there's so much light. So now we need to hold on to all that light, and the light that we put out in the world is the light that will be reflected back onto us, okay? So we all know about the Maccabees, Maccabim, whatever you want to call them, right? Those strong Jews that fought. So just think about it, right? So we know it's an acronym for Mi Kamocha Be'elim Hashem, which means who is like you, God? Like, it's like people that said there's a God, right? I believe in you, God. Mi Chamocha, who is like you, okay? But I want you to turn the question back on yourself. Maccabi, who are you? Who can you be and who can you become? That's the question we all need to hold after Hanukkah. Who are you? Because we just went through darkness with a little bit of light and we're going back into darkness for a while. So this is not the time of year where we're flying high on the high holidays. It's not. This is the hardest chunk of the Jewish calendar. Okay, not talking about the ends of, you know, the summertime when that's also a sad period. But this is just a long period of darkness. And honestly, being that it's my first winter in Chicago, it's pretty darn freezing cold. I told my mother, I hope I don't get depressed. Like, it's so like, I don't want to be outdoors.
Eve, this is nothing yet.
Oh
Nothing.
my goodness. I'm like, this is insane. It's insane. And
It's
yeah,
global warming. You'll be fine.
Oh, wait, if you've never experienced minus 30 wind chills?
Wait
I
a
mean,
minute,
Yeah.
Eve,
Worse here. Oh gosh.
Eva, you're welcome to visit me. You can do Zoom from my house.
Okay, that's so nice of you, Hanale. Hannah's in Arizona. She's laughing at all of us. But it's pretty darn cold. And it's funny because my husband travels a lot. I mean, a few weeks ago, he was in Hawaii. I was like, you know, like cracking the ice off the windshield. And he's like, how are you? I'm like, I don't want to talk now. I'm so happy for you. Goodbye. You know, like, it's hard. It is so hard. Okay, so this is something really amazing that I want to share. Okay, this is like new in from this morning. I'm like, I wanted to understand like this bridge, the bridge of Hanukkah holding together these two dark times. So this is really, really interesting. Okay, Hanukkah is considered the meeting of sisters. Okay, does anyone want to guess like what? Like who? Which sisters? Okay, we spoke about Yehudit last week, but that's just one woman. But Hanukkah represents the meeting of sisters. And what I'm talking about is Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah are two matriarchs, had very, very different energies, okay? Rachel was, as we know, was outwardly beautiful. There was her beauty about her. Things were good. She was always loved. She went through ups and downs in her life, but she was outwardly, it was all good. It was beautiful. Like that was her essence. It was outward beauty. Now, Leah, her sister, very, very different personality, very different essence. Leah was a little darker. She was inward, okay? But something about Leah, as Rachel was up and down, Leah was consistent. My mentor, Elisa Bulow, she often, sometimes we're talking about the different personalities and outreach, and we work with so many different leaders in women in leadership, and she says like she's kind of like rain, like Elisa Bulow. She says she's like the rain. She's steady and consistent. She's always there. She's always, you know what to expect with Elisa. And then she was giving an example, like someone like Lori Palatnik. She's like lightning. She is just strong and bold and flashy and out there and whoa, like she'll blow you away. I don't know if you guys listened to the Momentum Boost last night. They raised over $1 million last night for Momentum. And it was incredibly inspiring. And that's Lori. I wrote to her, I'm like, you were on fire last night. Okay, she was on fire. That's Lori. She's lightning. And then you have rain, right? And we need both. So that's Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah, they hold hands on Hanukkah. Okay, they come together, they combine their forces, their powers and their strengths. And by the way, if you remember last month, the month of Kislev, that we had a Rosh Chodesh gathering, we learned about the month. The tribe for the month was Rachel's tribe. It was the tribe of Benjamin, okay? So her, right, she has two tribes, and all 12 tribes represent different months. So we just came from Rachel's tribe, and now we're moving away from Rachel's tribe. We're moving into the other tribes, the other children of the other imahot. Okay, so it's very, very interesting what is going on here. So once again, Leah represents hidden, but consistent, okay? And a covered world, like you don't always see what's going on. And Rachel represents this revealed beauty. So there's the hidden and the revealed. And we need both, right? Leah, okay, actually the gematria, which is the numerical value for the letters Leah, right? Lamed, Aleph, Hey. Anyone good at gematria? It's really interesting. So Leah so the Lamed is 30. So now you have it. The Aleph is 1 and the Hey is 5. So 36. 36 is a very Jewish number. We all know it because, when we give a nice bar mitzvah, if we want to be, not cheap, but you could give 18. That's very Jewish. 36, double high. We could do that. But 36, that's why we think 36 is so Jewish. But there's more to 36 because there's actually 36 hidden righteous people, right? Have you ever heard of the Lamed Vav Tzadikim? That in every generation, there are 36 hidden people. It could be you. I'm like looking at Laura Kahn right now. Such a kind-hearted person. I'm serious. It could be you. Gloria, I don't know who it is. I'm sure we have some of them in the L'chaim community. There's no doubt in my mind because people are really, really special here. And you would never know who they are because they're usually hidden. Like they're really just very, right? Humble, simple people, whatever. I'm telling you, Sue, I'm pointing at you. Okay, the lady that takes out the recycling quietly, humbly in the L'chaim Center. I'm telling you, mwah, what would we do without you? Not only are you saving the L'chaim Center, you're saving the world. I'm serious. Okay, so there's 36 tzaddikim. Okay, here's another 36. There's 36 hidden lights. We call it the Or Haganuz, lights that are hidden. Okay, and it's very mystical what we're talking about, but here's one more. How many candles do we light on Hanukkah? 36. Okay, so Leah, which her name is 36, and all of these beautiful 36 for Hanukkah, okay, she is bringing this hidden. She's all about the hidden, and she's holding hands with the revealed, with her sister. Okay, so if we go back to the story of Hanukkah that we're walking out of, the Greeks, what did they want to do? They wanted to take out our spirituality, right? And if you look, I wish, let me get a pen, or is there a pen? I want to show you guys something really cool. Let me show you something. Let's see, pen, yeah, oh, perfect, thank you, Mom. Okay, so here is the Hebrew word for Greeks, okay? Let's see if it'll go backwards. So first there's a yud, right? Then there's a vav, and then there's a nun. That spells Yavan. Isn't that such an interesting word? It's like little lines that keep on getting longer and longer. Yavan are the Greeks. And what this represents, just the way that it looks, it's almost like quicksand, that it's a slippery slope. What the Greeks tried to do, to say beauty is the most important thing. When you get hooked on that, your spirituality, it's like quicksand. You lose the balance between the body and the soul. If you are spending 1 hour a day at the gym, you're supposed to be spending as much, if not more, time and effort on your internal world. You can't just focus on the external because that's not who you are. Are you a body or are you a soul? I mean, that's the question. Okay, food for thought. Write this down. Am I a body or am I a soul? Right? Like, so the way that I teach it is that you are a soul. You have a body, and the body is the scuba suit for the soul. It's just the scuba suit. Isn't that a great way of explaining it? Like you are a soul. All of you, I'm looking at these beautiful faces in front of me on the screen. You guys are beautiful neshamos, beautiful souls. It's what's inside that counts. And very often we get tripped up by the externals. I do this also. We do this also. I mean, I think personally, I could go on a huge rampage right now, but I don't want to take so much time. But I personally think that one of the biggest problems in the Orthodox world, if I could speak as maybe one of the only Orthodox people on this call right now, I don't know, maybe there's a few others, but I see the flaws. I see the beauty. you should see me in carpool line, seeing like all the families, like these big cars, like these 15-seaters, because some of them are very big family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Like I get choked up every day driving, dropping my kids off at their school. I love it. There's so much beauty. But if I could, I don't even know if I should say this, but if I could say like there is a flaw, it's that we are focusing too much on the externals. I think it's in every part of our world that we are so focused on the externals that we've almost forgotten what it's all about. And that's why the two sisters hold hands on this holiday. And by the way, so interesting, there's one more holiday that we see a connection between the two sisters, and that's the holiday of Purim. We call Mordechai, right? The legend Mordechai and the story of Mordechai and Esther, we call him Mordechai ha-Yehudi, okay? Yehuda from the tribe of Judah is the descendant of Leah, and Mordechai is a direct descendant of Rachel. You see the two, that's how he's called again and again, Mordechai ha-Yehudi, the descendant of these two sisters, because it's the outward and the inward coming together. And that's what saves the day. So we need to walk into this world with all the beauty that the outer world offers us. Like Greek had a lot of wisdom to share with us, right? They had science, they had technology, they had everything. They were like very advanced, but they didn't want us to have our spirituality, our essence. They tried to rob us of that. That's why they forbid all the things that were spiritual, Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Brit Milah, anything, Torah learning. Why? Why did they care? Because they didn't want us to have that inner world. It was all about the outer. Okay, so I hope this, I wanted to just sum up Hanukkah a little bit so that we could take more as we move forward into the winter ahead, into the darkness. So first of all, does anyone want to ask a question, share something? Anyone have something that they want to add before I carry on? Maybe there's one or two more things that I'll share just before we switch the topic back to our actual topic at hand, right? So one or two more things about darkness, okay? So thank God we're living in a time where we could practice Judaism, we could, celebrate, we could proudly walk the streets, we could have kosher food, we could do anything. We could go to services, every morning, every Shabbat morning when I have to like cut through, like there's a huge line in front of the L'chaim Center for the DMV. It's funny, every single morning that I show up there on Shabbat, like even this week, my mom was like, where are all these people coming from? Because she didn't know there was a DMV. So I said to her, yeah, they're lining up for the L'chaim Center. So, but it's funny because I joke that, but one day it's going to be true. One day it's totally going to be like, there's going to be a lineup. Julie, get ready. I'm telling you, we're going to need to expand beyond. We'll take over the DMV, but we could dream, right? So every Shabbat, and I'm walking with my kids with their kippot and their tzitzit, and we're like cutting through the line. Sorry, some of them I could tell are Jewish. I could just tell in their eyes. And there's every type of person in that line. It's wonderful, right? And I'm just like, hello, Shabbat Shalom. We're cutting through. Clearly, we're going to synagogue. We're very, very blessed. Okay, so now we're able to be as bright and as strong as we are in the world. But at the same time, we know, right, there's overt anti-Semitism and there's covert anti-Semitism. We don't know who's our friends. We don't know who is the friend of Israel, of the Jewish people. We cannot know. So we also need to be very wary and very cautious and careful, right? We're living in very interesting times. There's a lot of hatred out there. Some of it is very public. Some of it we just don't know. So how do we fight that darkness? How do we fight that darkness? Because as soon as we hear the terrible news, whatever is happening in the world, how do you feel? You feel small. You feel like, what am I supposed to do? How could I fix things? How could I change things, right? So the Jewish people have always fought darkness with light. That is the way. Yes, we have an IDF. Yes, we know how to fight back. Yes, we stand up for ourselves. But our way, as soon as we hear of an incident that happens, we bring light. I'll tell you an example. Good friends of mine, her name is Esty Yarmish. Some of you from Momentum, maybe from years back, from the early years, might know Esty. So Esty Yarmish, she lives on Rehov Agassi in Har Nof. Okay, now a couple years ago, maybe 2015, 14, 15, I think, there was a terrible incident that terrorists came into a synagogue on Rehov Agassi, like right across the street from her house, basically. And in the middle of morning prayers, with kitchen knives, there was a massacre that happened. Does anyone remember this incident? The pictures in the news were atrocious. Talisim, prayer shawls, soaked up in blood. I think there were five men that were killed. These were fathers of large families. There were 27 orphans on that block on that day. It was a terrible, terrible incident. So I'm very close with Esty Yarmish, and I called her up. So the whole street was put into lockdown. They were looking for the terrorists. So I called Esty. I'm gonna cry. I called Esty, and I mean, we were so broken. I lived in Har Nof for 5 years. These were my neighbors. I knew the wives. I knew these men. These were rabbis that we would go to ask questions. Each one that was killed was a light. They weren't simple people. These were giants. And I called Esty and I said, Esty, we're praying for you. We're so worried. We're reading the news. We can't believe what happened. It was so close to home. I said, what are you doing? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, what are we supposed to do? We're locked down all day long. We're sitting looking out the windows, ambulances, police, not a person on the street, just cops searching everywhere. So I took my kids away from the window because there was nothing to do but look, and we weren't being productive. So what are we doing? We took out every bit of flour and every potato and every little ingredient that we had in our kitchen, and we're baking. We're baking for the orphans, for the families. That's all we could do. We're just gonna give. There was so much chesed that was happening because that's how we fight. There's nothing you could do. We could be scrolling through our phones and reading the headlines again and again and again. It's not going to change anything. So we go into productivity mode. We go into giving mode. That's the way of the Jew. We fight with kindness. We fight with light. Wow. That's how we fight. So I'll tell you guys a little story, cute little story. There was a businessman who had 3 sons, and he wanted to give his, oh, my mom needs a tissue. Okay. The businessman wanted to give his business over to one of his sons. So he gave them a little challenge. He says, each of you have 3 barns, and whoever fills the barn to the maximum capacity will inherit my business. So 3 sons, 3 different personalities. One of them, he's so into it. He's working for the whole month he's working. And he's sweating away. He's from morning to night. The day comes and he shows his father what he's done. He has collected newspapers rolled up tightly. He's collected them from every dumpster, from every neighbor, and he did a pretty good job. He got a couple hundred newspapers together. He filled it pretty solid. Okay, good job. A for effort. And then the next son comes, and he, such a wise one, he had made a hole in the top of the barn, and he had a transfer belt funneling sand and dirt and pebbles into the barn. So great, he did a good job. I mean, excellent. The father's very impressed. And then he goes to the 3rd son. We all have this child, the one that's like, oh my gosh, I forgot about it. Was that today? So he says, give me 1 minute, Dad. And he runs into the barn and he literally comes out 30 seconds later. He says, go ahead. And the father comes in, and there in the middle of the barn is a single lit candle. And the candle's light and rays and radiance is in every crack and crevice of the entire barn. Because in a place of darkness, a little light goes a very, very long way. So the father had to award it definitely to that son, because the entire barn was filled with light. So ladies, the good news is, because we live in such a dark world, our little light goes a very, very long way. And our light that we put out in the world is not just light, it's actually my favorite topic ever, which maybe we'll do another class on. It's called Kiddush Hashem, which means sanctification of God's name. It's the greatest mitzvah ever. And by the way, sanctification, Kiddush Hashem, the opposite is Chilul Hashem, which is desecration of God's name, which means you're leaving a vacuum of God in the world. You're taking godliness out of the world, okay? And there's nothing in between. You're either making a Kiddush Hashem or you're making a Chilul Hashem in every act that you do. Okay, I'm gonna have to remind myself this when I'm freezing cold and my knuckles are frozen and I don't wanna bring the grocery cart back all the way to the store. I just wanna like leave it on the side. But that could be a Chilul Hashem, right? Like it's either a Kiddush Hashem or a Chilul Hashem. So every choice that we do, we need to decide, am I gonna sanctify or desecrate God's name in this world? So that is how we bring our light forward, by sanctifying. And I'd like to spend the next, okay, I think I'm gonna end here with this post-Hanukkah rant, but I really hope you got something out of it, because I think we need to kind of like warm ourselves up with the last 8 days and keep going for the next couple of months until we get to very joyous times for the Jewish people. We have Adar, this year we have 2 Adars, we have a very joyous, the happiest month of the year. So we have it's a leap year, so we have 2. And then Passover and all those great months. There's a lot to look forward to. But right now we need to really, really hold on tight to the light in our hearts and our souls and carry it forward. Okay, so if there's any questions about this topic, anything, otherwise we're gonna move forward for the next 15 minutes into some conversation about honoring parents. Okay, are we good with that? Nadine, you wanna say something? Okay, well, okay, can I say one more thing about light? Okay, I love this topic. I love, love, love this topic. It's actually an obsession. It's not only my obsession, it's actually the obsession of the Jewish people, okay? Because we bring every holiday, Shabbat, we bring it in with candles and we take it out with a candle. Shabbat candles, holiday candles, lighting Havdalah candles, Yurtzeit candles to bring honor to someone that has passed. In a synagogue, we have the Ner Tamid, the light, the eternal lamp that's always lit. We have the menorah. We have any other candles? Any other candles in Judaism? Some other examples that I could think of, when the Jewish people walked through the desert, God had a pillar of fire that led us through the darkness, right? We had cloud in front of us leading us by day and a pillar of fire leading us at night, right? We have the burning bush. God talking to us from the burning bush. There's an obsession with light.
When you're holding, when you take your child down to the chuppah.
Oh, okay. Like to the chuppah, it's a custom to hold a candle. It's a good one. I'm sure there's a few more, but there is an obsession of light in Judaism, and we're not pyromaniacs, okay? I mean, maybe some, my kids, though, they're always like putting their finger through the flames, like, guys, stop, okay? It's because our mission statement is to be a light unto the nations. This is the mission statement of the Jewish people. So we do love light, and we do welcome light. And a light, a candle, is connected to the soul. That God's candle is the soul of man. That is the quote from the book of Proverbs. God's candle is your soul. You are his light in this world. So ladies, take your light and shine it out to the world. Okay, now I want you guys to meet my mom. And I want to talk about honoring your parents, because I don't think I do such a good job. I know I have a long ways to go.
Not true.
But my mom has done a really good job with her parents, and not such easy situations as being daughter of Holocaust survivors, very challenging situations. And until the last day of all of their lives, my mom was right there by her side doing her mitzvah. This is really her mitzvah. Like, do you remember we spoke about how everyone has a mitzvah? I think on Shabbat you spoke about your mitzvah being, my mom spoke, on Shabbat my mom spoke, and she spoke about her mitzvah being lighting her Shabbat candles, right? We spoke about that. But I think, like, if you would ask me what's my mom's mitzvah, I would say it's honoring parents. So I want to go back to last week. We spoke about food, drink, clothing, covering, bringing in, escorting out. We spoke about standing up for parents, not fighting them, like verbally, not like, disagreeing with them, all these things. So my mom, if you want to share a little bit on your honoring your parent journey, do you want to jump in, or should I ask you some questions? How do you want to do this?
I can jump in a little bit. First of all, before I start, I'm really very humbled and overwhelmed by you amazing ladies who come to these classes and who want to learn more. And of course, you're green and growing. And I give you you should have hatzlacha in your life, and you should continue growing and success, and just continue growing and doing the amazing things that you do. So kol hakavod to you people. I'm really impressed. So how do I start? Do I start when I was a little girl?
Yeah, I mean, share whatever you want. And
Okay.
and this is a good time, if anyone has questions, you could either type them into the chat box, and we could go through any of the things we spoke about last week, and the things that I just mentioned about honoring parents. Whatever questions you have, we'll try to address them now.
So when I think back about my life, I think that I must have been an old soul, because as a very, very little girl, I was raised by Holocaust survivors. They had tremendous losses. My dad, Alav Shalom, he lost a wife and a beautiful little girl whose name was Chana Golda. And my mother lost a husband and all her family. My dad lost most of his family members. So here we were, and they came to Montreal. They had my brother in Germany, and then they came as soon as they could to Montreal. And there we were. I didn't speak English. I spoke Yiddish. I spoke Yiddish on the street. I played in Yiddish. I mean, our neighbors who knew a little bit of Yiddish, they would come and say, "Let me hear your daughter speaking. Let me hear her." I was just a little girl. I only really learned English when I was in kindergarten, in public school. We weren't observant. My dad had to work on Shabbat, and we were just traditional, and we had a very they did the best that they could. What could I say? They were dealing with lots of post-traumatic syndrome. How could they not? How could they not? But for some reason, maybe being the only
I
daughter.
mean, do you want to? Would it be disrespectful to?
What?
To say like how they coped with their trauma. I mean, they each had, like, Zadie was a workaholic.
Right. My dad was a workaholic, but
He had a non-kosher butcher.
He had
Like,
a retail non-kosher store, and he had and he also sold meat wholesale, which was kosher. So he worked hard because he had to make a living for his family. And my mom, she had to deal with, I guess, her trauma. There were no psychologists. There were no psychiatrists for them. There was nothing. They came, and there was really hardly anybody to speak to other than people who went through similar situations as them. And not everybody wanted to hear about their situations. And In fact, they couldn't speak about it until years later.
You want to say that example about the butter?
Yeah, so we were living in a duplex, and our neighbors next door, so Canadian people and Canadians for many generations. And my mother started talking to her neighbor, and she said, you know, we went through this and we had this. And the neighbor turns to her and says, oh, what are you talking about? We had to wait in line for butter. So my mother shut her mouth, didn't say a word, and just kind of continued on her way. My mother hardly had a really good network of friends, unfortunately. My mom was very, very strong-willed. My mom was powerful. My mom really, I mean, there were stories during the Holocaust where she just stood up to Nazis, where she just stood up, where she ran away. She was in a few concentration camps. I mean, she was powerful, and she figured, my whole family was taken away. What do I have to lose? And she was tough. And I guess part of me got some of that from her.
And part of me.
And part of Eve. In fact, Eve is wearing my mom's wedding ring. When she passed away, she was in Portland and she had lost her ring, and she said, Mom, do you think I could have Bubby's wedding ring after my mom passed? And I said, I don't know. What do you mean? She says, well, I lost my ring and I really want to wear her ring because she's so much a part of me. And I know that Eve has taken a lot from my mom, from who she was, and just from her powerfulness, for sure. I know that my children, I mean, Eve says that we really honored our parents, and thank God we did. But I know that our children as well honored their grandparents tremendously. There's no question about that. So maybe when they saw that we honored our parents,
Okay, so my mom is very
came over
humble.
to
I'm going to
them.
jump in here. Okay, I want to share something really nice. So whoever was there on Shabbat, we spoke about various things. Our topic was not honoring your parents. My mother was speaking about some of the miracles that happened. We connected the Parsha to Hanukkah, to some personal family miracles. But something that came out was that my mom said that for X amount of years, when her mom was living with us in Toronto, near us, my grandmother, my Babi Lola, would come every Shabbat, like how many years? 7 years in a row? For 7 years.
After her husband died. Yeah.
After her husband died. So every Shabbat. And my mom, who at this point in her life, all her friends go to synagogue, they're part of a vibrant shul and community in Toronto and Thornhill. And her, it's like a thing. It's like a social thing. You go, like there's Jews, I call them the JFK Jews, the just for Kiddush Jews. So there's like a whole world of those JFK Jews. Like if you miss the Kiddush, you miss your social interaction for the year. So my mom for 7 solid years did not go with her friends to the Kiddush club, to the shul, to any of that. And that was a huge sacrifice. Like, she was just, and my mother said, like, this is my mitzvah. Like, that's what she said. This is my mitzvah. This is my time to give to my mom, to be with her. And how much beauty came out of all that time. Like, that's when all the beautiful conversations came out. And my mom's writing a book now on her mother's life. She had a miraculous life. She lived to 100 years old. This is a lady that kicked ovarian cancer at 80 years old. I mean, she was a survivor through and through and through. Like she was almost invincible. Like she was such a blessing in the world. But my mom got to know her more and understand her more during those last few years that they were able to connect. And whoever, my grandmother, who never observed the Sabbath, never, right? Was now observing the Sabbath every Shabbat. She would like, even without being told, she would get up, she would wash her hands, al netilat yadayim, before hamotzi. Like, who knew that at the last stage of her life, she would be absorbing so much Judaism into her last years. Like, what a blessing that was.
You know what? Eve says it was a tremendous sacrifice, but really, it was my privilege. And I know a few friends of mine said to me, what? They didn't know how many years I'd be with my mom every Shabbat and every holiday. But they said to me, what? You're not going to come to shul? Why are you doing that? I just turned to them. I'm very stubborn and willful in my own way, and I don't follow anybody. And I just turned and I said, it's my privilege. It's my time to be with my mom. And I was, and we talked and we laughed. And I gave over many, many stories about her lifestyle. And my mom would say to me, you know, I really admire you that you can have this lifestyle. I don't think I could, she said, but yet my mom was very spiritual, and my mom believed in God so adamantly. I think in my life, and now I turned 70. I think in my life, I've never met anyone who had such a strong belief in God. She just, things happened in the Holocaust, and her belief in God was tremendous, tremendous. In fact, at the end of the death march in 1945, she was with her friend who they survived together for the death march. And her friend met a man from Czechoslovakia, and she said, I like him and I want to marry him. My mom literally took her by the hair, and she had a thick head full of hair, pulled her away and said, we went through what we went through because we're Jewish. You are not going to marry him. And she didn't. Her friend didn't marry him, and she married a lovely man, and they moved to Israel, and her friend lived out her life in Israel. She was very, very powerful, my mom. And I had the privilege of being with her for 7 years, for every Shabbat and for every Yom Tov. We laughed, we talked, we reminisced. I understood, she understood me. I understood where she was at, what she was all about. I heard stories that my brothers never heard. I know more about her than any one of my siblings. I have 2 older brothers, and it was tremendous. It was tremendous. It was truly my privilege. But I must tell you something. When I grew up, I never said one bad word to my mom. I must have been very protective. I must have had a sense that my mom went through something terrible, because we didn't know when we were young. I never said a bad word to my mom. If I was upset, I would go in my room and I would cry, and I would come out like nothing happened. I don't know why. I don't know what propelled me. I don't know why I felt that way, but I never said a bad word to my mom or to my dad in my whole life.
Okay, so does anyone want to ask any questions? Because what I'm hearing, and I think this might be the question that you're all feeling, is how do you not feel like resentful? And how do you feel like my mom uses the word like a privilege, right? Like, how do you, this is honoring our parents it's known to be one of the hardest mitzvot in the Torah, and one of the most important ones, right? It is the one it's the one, remember we said it's on the side of honoring God, right? On the 10 commandments, it's on the side of between man and God, because it's the bridge that parallels this world to the above world. And the relationship we have with our parents is symbolic of the relationship that we're supposed to have with our Creator. And that's how we could understand a father relationship to our God, our Father in heaven. Okay? So it's not supposed to be easy. And my mom, and she's not telling you so many stories. I mean, I hate to say this, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but like in our society, my mom's upbringing would be considered a dysfunctional household, right? It wasn't a household with love. And no, it wasn't. I mean, like we could tell you stories. I mean, on Shabbat, on Friday night, you said something about like she would have been arrested for that. Like, I don't remember what it was that you were talking about, but
she threw the pail of water on the boy.
Okay, like, yeah, like someone was bullying my uncle, So my grandmother, she took a pail of water and cold water, and she threw it off the balcony on this boy. Like, okay.
And she said, don't you dare touch my boy again. Well, for sure, he never did.
Like, what would happen today if that, like, you know, you'd have the cops at your doorstep, right? You'd have Jewish Family Child Services, like what? So, but there's so many other stories. I mean, I remember, I don't remember if you told me this, if Bobby told me this, but when my grandmother went to give birth to my mom, who was the youngest of the 3 kids, so her, as I said, my Zaidi Usher was always at work.
He used to go out of town to buy cattle and to buy.
So she didn't have a support system. She didn't have friends. Like, it was a very lonely experience. And they're in a new country and not even speaking the language. She had to go to the hospital to give birth. She had no one to watch her 2 boys. So this is what I heard. And you could tell me if I'm wrong. She always, you know, corrects me. So I heard that she literally tied the boys.
No, this was when she was going for an appointment. No.
Okay.
She was going for an
She
appointment.
tied the boys like on their wrists to the crib on a string so that they wouldn't go too far, right? It's like
they were little.
The original playpen, okay? Like, they were little, and she tied them on a string to the playpen and she walked out the house. I mean,
so she went for an appointment and she told the doctor that she left her 2 boys at home. And they said, go home right now. Don't you ever do that.
So I mean, it's a miracle. I always say it's a miracle. It's a miracle that my mom survived, and not only survived, but really, like, my mom is really she's a self-made person. Like, it wasn't, she's a very emotionally healthy and strong individual, but it's not like she got kisses from, like, she didn't grow up with a lot of love. She had to find the strength to build herself and to say, I can do it. Like, when even her mom would say, no, you can't do it. Don't go to university. Like, literally told my mom, don't go to university, get a job cleaning. That's what they told my mom.
No, she said, get a job and bring home the money. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was 20 years old, I said, I'm going to university. And my mom let her, rest in peace. She said, no, you're not going to go. She says, you're going to get a job and bring home the money, and you're not going to be successful anyway. And I was very respectful of my parents. And I said, Mom, if you can't afford to have a cleaning lady, I'll clean the house. But you know what? I am going, and I will be successful. And Baruch Hashem, when I graduated, my mom was front and center, the proudest. You know what? When we moved to Toronto and we had our 4 beautiful children, and my mom moved with her second husband because my dad died pretty young. And she came to Toronto. When she walked into my home, she said, I wish I would have known then what I see now in your home. And that was really big that she said that. And she adored, all I wanted from her, I didn't expect anything. I grew up really not expecting acknowledgement, or I just, I built myself up. I worked on myself. Talk about Musser. I worked on myself from the time I remember when I was 4 years old. That's how I worked on myself, to build myself, to know that I'm confident. Baruch Hashem, I would say I'm a pretty confident person. I mean, not patting myself on the back, but I'm pretty solid and stable in who I am. And all I wanted from my mom was that she should be a good bubby. And you know what? She was. And the kids adored her and loved her. And that's all I wanted from her.
Yeah.
That's all.
So just, I know our time is up, and I wish we had more time, because this is so nice. Maybe I'll address one more thing, because one of the harder topics that we discussed in this conversation about, let's go back actually 2 classes ago. So before we spoke about honoring our parents, we spoke about machloket, which is conflict, right? Spoke about conflict resolution, and how machloket, argument, is the most disgusting thing in God's eyes, and we should avoid it at all costs. And that came to the conversation of, well, what about people that are harmful to you or rub you the wrong way, or what were some of the words that we used? You know, or maybe are not emotionally well, or, you know, there were all those questions that came up, and that's how we got into the topic last week of 2 weeks ago of honoring our parents, and I know that some people have very difficult situations,
Toxic
toxic
relationships. Yeah.
relationships. And I did share, I mean, I'll just quote it. I said, you know, the mitzvah of honoring your parents, this is the hard part. This was the hard part that I saw this landing in a difficult way. I saw it as I said the words. I saw how it landed with certain people. And I'm very sensitive to the fact that everyone has a complicated dynamic in their lives with their inner circle, their family, their parents, their siblings. It's not simple. So what I quoted from the book that we were learning was that it's a mitzvah to honor your parents, even if they don't deserve honor, right? And I did say that, but I know that that comes with a lot of heaviness. Okay, so I want to just add some sensitivity to that, because I don't think it's easy. I think it took my mom years and years and years to understand like the dysfunction. It wasn't my grandmother's fault. It was the circumstance that she was brought into and the pain that she dwelt with. And now on the other side, we could look back and we could say, wow, how did she manage? How did she cope? How did she even like semi-function?
You know how I managed? Because from thinking back on my life, every time something happened, I made a mental note and I would say, oh, I won't do that when I'm a parent. Oh, I won't do that when I'm a parent. I never blamed my mom, but I worked on myself. That's how I managed, and I built myself up. By the time I was a parent, I knew exactly what I wanted and what I didn't want to do. I really did.
So Mom, one of the tools that we've been talking about in this whole course, we spoke a lot about how to use our mouth, like not like what to say, what not to say, when to rebuke, when to hold back. So one of the things that we've spoken about was the character trait of silence, of shtika, that there's a very big blessing that happens when you could be in pain and not answer back, right? There's like, remember, I think I quoted the Vilna Gaon, who says that a person that could take in the pain and not have the last word, is on a higher level than all the angels. Do you remember that quote that I shared about like the power of silence? So I think that's kind of what happened all those years, that things were not okay. Like it was not okay. There was a lot of pain and dysfunction in growing up in a home that was built on very shaky foundations. And there's no judgment. It's amazing that they did what they did.
But yet on the other hand, I'm so grateful that I grew up in my home. I'm so grateful that I had my parents, because I would not be the same person today as I am had I not grown up in that house. I worked very hard on myself. I worked very hard at relationships, and relationships are very important to me. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And at the end of the day, those 7 years that I was with my mom, every Shabbat, every Yom Tov, were precious. Were just precious. And you know what? Even though I was with my mom the whole Shabbat, she slept over the whole Yom Tov. She said to me, you know what, Harriet? Do you think on Sunday you could take me out and we'll go for a coffee? And I looked at her and I said, sure. I said, but you know what? I'm busy with the kids, and I'm busy in my household, and I'm busy preparing my lessons for my profession. But you know what? I will pick you up later on. And I did. And every Sunday, in spite of the fact that we spent the whole Shabbat together, and she loved our friends, and we had people for Shabbat lunch, and she loved it every second. And then I would pick her up later on in the afternoon on Sunday. Never, never, never resenting. Never feeling, oh, I'm taking my time. Always feeling, yes, this is my privilege.
Hmm,
And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that.
that's so nice. Well,
What can I say?
thank you, Mom. This was so great, and just to, this really, I feel like it was nice to bring some of the lessons we learned and discussed last class to life with like a real live example. Something that we said. I'll just read some of my notes from our last class. I wrote about having gratitude in our heart to our parents just for bringing us into this world. So this was the quote I said: "Even when they didn't raise you as you would have hoped." Right? Just the fact that he or she gave you life is the reason for giving honor, right? It's not about how they raised you. It's like acknowledging that a parent gave you life. There's 3 partnerships in a child: the mother, the father, and God, right? So we're the gratitude. I mean, that's, you guys feel it, right? You see, you hear the gratitude that it was an honor, it was a privilege. The words my mother is using, these are not just words. This is how she's lived it. She's lived with gratitude. And you know, in today's day and age, if anyone would analyze her upbringing, they would say, like, how are you, like, my mother has never spoken to a therapist in her life. Like, it's a whole different generation. Like, every one of us, and you know, every one of us, you know, therapists are like, you know, they're like our best friends nowadays. Our kids have therapists, like we all have our therapy, our coaches are this or that. But it was like, it was quite amazing that my mom was able to remain very whole in who she was, with gratitude, with understanding like the privilege, the honor of this mitzvah, and really just accepting that, as my mom said, like, it was because of her upbringing that she is who she is. Like, it's huge. There's no judgment. There's no pointing fingers. Like, you know, we're not saying like, well, if I had a different upbringing, I would have, you know, X, Y, Z. It's not that. It's saying, because of my upbringing, I am stronger. So looking at the good, seeing the good. It was so nice to have this time together. I'm so happy we did this, Julie, because I think I am zoomed out. So last year, all year long, I was teaching on Zoom, and I was so excited that we're not doing like Zoom only. And I'm just so excited to be with people in person. But this was kind of nice, like, to really see everyone's faces, because usually I'm just looking at the ladies sitting on the couches around me at the L'Chaim Center, that I don't really get to see everyone on Zoom. So this was a nice treat, and maybe I should spend a little more time looking at the beautiful faces on Zoom from near and far. So nice, Les, that you were able to come to one of my classes. See, maybe this was just for you, right? We love having you here. And thank you all for coming. And I'm no worries. Like, if anyone was worried, like I was sick, it was literally a 24-hour bug. And I'm so back on my feet. And I guess this was just a gift to do it in a different way. But I'll see you next week. Next week, we have a really important class next week. So I'm so excited to really get back to being together and to carrying on this topic. It's been fabulous so far, and I'm looking forward to next week.
And I want to say goodbye.
Thank you.
I want to say goodbye and thank you so much for accepting my Evelette.
Oh, we love her.
And I must tell you that when my Eve was 18 months old, she thought she ruled the world. I used to, you know, I was on maternity leave from my teaching, and she was 18 months old, and I ran a little, you know, playgroup daycare in my house. She thought that she ran it. She was only 18 months old. We would walk.
She's still running it, all the stuff she does.
Yeah, we'd walk to the bus and to go to the library with maybe 5 different kids. They were up to 5 years old. She was 18 months. She would be leading the group. When it was time for them to just lie down on a mat and sleep for about half an hour, she would walk around pointing to everyone saying, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. She really was a force to be reckoned with, and I allowed her as long as she was safe. That's all. I never, when she went to kindergarten, her first day of kindergarten, she looked like she was coming out of the fashion magazine. She was wearing 2 different colored socks. She was wearing this really cool hat with a scarf. And that was Eve. And I said, good, go for it. I didn't care. I picked my battles.
Yeah, I'm gonna close the Zoom now before we get into my teenage years. Where
But I am
Oh,
totally
how long
for
are
it.
you staying?
I'm leaving today.
Oh, safe travels. Love meeting you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank-
wonderful
Really great.
sharing.
Thank you,
this
Eve.
time
Feel
with
better.
both of
Feel
you.
Really
free.
great.
you.
All right,
Thank
see you
you.
soon. Gotta go.
Oh, Doris, hi, Doris. So
Travel safe.
God, you know what? You actually spoke to me. I mean, I grew up the same way. I want to talk to you here.